on. Hi there, this is Jill Tiny with my very special guest, Sangita Patel, and this is the Journey of Possibility. It's brilliant to be here today, Sangita. You are one of our newest members, but you are doing one of the most adventurous things. It's fantastic because you're based up in Liverpool, so a lot of people will have heard about you, but won't know anything about you. So a lot of our collaborators are quite interested in who's this person that's up there in Liverpool launching a whole BeCollaboration community. So that's partly the reason for this podcast, to find out more about you, more about what makes you tick, more about what gets you angry, and predominantly why you're doing this up in Liverpool, the home of community. So tell us a little bit, what got you going in the BeCollaboration community? What attracted you in the first place?
Well, I've known Erkan for, about 20 years now.
Wow, since you were 4, that's a long time.
And he has been talking to me about it by email, posts, Facebook, etc. And I went along to a meeting, I think about 1.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
And I went along with my husband, who's quite cynical about everything. And at the end of it, he was like, "It sounds really good." And I said, "Yeah." And Erkan and I have similar outlooks in life. So I was like, this sounds really good, but I'm not based in London. So I didn't become a member. And then at the time I was living in Manchester, and I knew I was going to be moving to Liverpool, which was what we had planned. And the thing about Liverpool for me is I lived here 30 years ago as a student for 3 years. And at the time I lived here, Hillsborough happened. It was the first time I ever visited Anfield. You know, I've been a Liverpool fan since I was 4. And it was a dream for me to come to Liverpool as to university. I was a big Beatles fan, big John Lennon fan. And I couldn't get over the sense of community that I experienced there. I'd never seen anything like it, in any city, and I've lived in lots of different cities in my time. But the way the community came together and supported each other, looked after each other, honoured each other, for me, it just kind of made sense that BeCollaboration and Liverpool would go hand in hand. And so I wanted to be involved in BeCollaboration from what I'd experienced. And I wanted to build something in Liverpool. Coming back 30 years later, I don't know anyone here.
Right.
So it's really from nothing. But it seems perfect to match these two loves together, if you like, and build something.
Yeah.
So that's why.
Brilliant. And at the end of the day, build something that's actually going to make a huge difference, because when you pull a few people, it just starts with a few people, and it grows and it grows and it grows, and you pull those people together that are also passionate about making a difference and can see where there is a need, and they can see who they can help, and they can see where their talents can be combined. Then all of a sudden you start to get traction. So what a challenge for you then, when you say you're walking into a city, I don't know anybody. You're going to sort of start this from the ground up. Where when Erkan and I started over in Hertford, we both had, a database we could call on. We both had a bit of a network that we could go to ask, would you like to come along to a meeting? But you're literally doing it from scratch. Did that daunt you when you thought about that?
It didn't daunt me. I know a few people on the periphery of Liverpool. So I know people, I've got a good friend in Warrington, people in Manchester, people in Yorkshire. Yeah. But I also have a wide network of people around the world. We lived in India for 4 years, and a lot of my friends that I made in England have since moved back to South Africa or Australia or etc. So there's a wide network of people. And then suddenly, as I said earlier, I'm a big Liverpool fan. Suddenly there's all these Liverpool fans that are coming out of the woodwork that I'd known these people for years, and I never knew they were a fan. Yeah. And it's like, well, what's your connection to Liverpool? Oh, I used to live there, and oh, I grew up there. And suddenly there's these communities coming out of the woodwork that I never knew had any association with Liverpool.
And of course, I think one of the strongest cities in the country, people are so proud to be Liverpudlian, aren't they?
They are.
Quite rightly too.
They are.
But it's so lovely to see it. And probably Manchester as well has got that kind of vibe. And I suppose people visit an international city, London, but I do feel that Londoners, and tell me I'm wrong, Londoners, but I do feel that a lot of people in London are quite cynical about, oh, well, it's the way it is. Oh, you can't change anything. What can you do? And they kind of get on with their life with their head down.
Yeah.
Survive it, and they get through it. Where I just feel like the people of Liverpool are more likely to roll their sleeves up and, as you say, come together.
Well, it's got a really long history, since we've been here. I mean, Richard was born here, but he tends to do a lot of reading in terms of finding out background.
Yeah.
And Liverpool was one of the main cities in the world in the days of empire. Yeah. It's where everything arrived and everything left. It was twinned with New York in its heyday. You just look at the architecture here and you can see how cosmopolitan, how rich it once was. And he recently read a book about the 10 cities that got impacted by the end of empire. And you've got Mumbai and Delhi in there, but number 10 is Liverpool.
And
in its time it has become very poor, from going to one of the richest cities in the world to one of the poorest in this country. But you would never see it. You'd never see it on people's faces. I've not encountered any, everywhere I go, I do experience some level of racism, and I'm in tune with that because of my background. But I've not experienced that in Liverpool.
Wow.
Ever.
That's brilliant.
So, I've walked into pubs and thinking, oh my God, it's going to be a bit tense. Nothing, just really warm, welcoming.
That's fantastic.
And so it's got that history. It's got a slave museum. I mean, how many cities have a museum dedicated to its history around slavery? And it's very cosmopolitan. It's got the oldest Chinese community. It's got one of the oldest Black communities, and it celebrates that quite uniquely, I think.
You're going to be an education for us, aren't you? I think I didn't know half of those things. It's brilliant. I can't wait to get up there. So what's the magic day? When do we launch?
We launch on the 17th of May, and it's a Friday. There's no football on, so good. And it's in the heart of the city. It's in a place called Hardman Street, which I know quite well, being our university student union just used to be around the corner. And you know what? I've forgotten the name of the venue.
It's something in the Fly, isn't it?
The is it the Fly in the Loaf?
That's it, Fly in the Loaf.
Yes.
I knew there was a fly in there somewhere.
And it's a beautiful pub. When I went in there, I was going around venues in Liverpool. There are some beautiful venues in Liverpool, but some were not available. And we just happened to go past this pub, walked in, and he showed us the venue, and it seems perfect. And one of the things he said is, look, it's a very small community in Liverpool. Everybody knows everybody. So it was just a nice feel to it. And, it's got a beautiful view of the cathedral, which again is it's an Anglican cathedral. It's the biggest Anglican cathedral in the world, apparently.
Is it?
Yeah, and it's just stunning. So yeah, it's a good place. I think it's going to work out.
I think the word will soon spread, won't it? If you say it's a close community, it's once we've had one or two meetings, then the word will get out. So tell us a little bit about Sangita, where you grew up, what shaped you, what are your views on the world, what's your journey in life? Tell us a bit about you.
Well, I was born to immigrants from India. So my dad came over in the 50s, my mum in the 60s, and So I was a child in the 70s. So, any childhood photos are all flares and orange and tan.
Yeah.
So you won't see any of those.
Yeah. I've got some of those. Thank goodness most of the photos were in black and white in those days. It didn't quite so bad.
Yeah. So my mum and dad, it's quite unusual because my dad has 2 brothers and a sister, and my mum has 2 sisters and 3 brothers.
Right.
And my mum's elder sister is married to my dad's elder brother.
Okay.
Right. So my grandmothers knew each other, and my grandmothers kind of got my mum and my dad together.
Right.
And it's just been, when they came over, we ended up living in a house, double fronted Victorian house, enormous house, with all 3 families, like my dad's 2 brothers, their wives and their children, and my grandmother. So it was literally, I think at first it was 12 children and 7 adults.
That's interesting because my parents are very similar. For my dad's family, he was one of 12, and him and his brothers used to live in one house, and his mum and dad and all the girls used to live in the other house.
Oh wow.
They would all go next door for dinner.
Wow.
Yeah, and then they'd have Wednesday night was like games night, and they would have a pool match or a card game or something, and she would do all of their washing and look after them and cook the dinner, and they
That's
had
amazing.
Ma's chair and Pa's chair by the fire, and they had their little routines. So this must have been, my dad was born in 1925, so early 30s, that environment. But it is a case of everyone got together, and then when they moved out one by one, they would then support the people that were left behind.
That's right.
And then they were sort of helped and supported as they got their places as they went on. It's that was community, wasn't it? In those days?
It was, yeah. I mean, we used to have people who would arrive from India, stay with us until they got established. People, like when Uganda happened, all the Indians were asked to leave Uganda. Family from there came over, stayed with us, and then got supported until they found their own place. And so there was always a sense of community. And the other thing my dad did in the 60s is everyone from his village that came over from India, they would gather together in that house, in our house, every Easter Sunday until it got too small, and then we found other locations. But for about 30 years, every Easter Sunday they would meet, and they would raise money to build roads, libraries, get school uniforms for the community back in India. Yeah. And as a result of it, all the other villages around us started having those meetups as well. And fantastic. I think my life living in that house and watching my dad build communities is why I'm so enrolled in the idea of collaboration, because I think I've seen it in action in so many different ways.
Yeah, definitely.
I think it's vital.
Have you been over there to see his legacy?
Yes. I graduated the same year as my brother, and 1990, and my dad was like, in the summer holidays, we had all these plans, and he was like, right, we're going to India, and none of us wanted to go at all. We were like, we've got plans, we've just graduated, we've got this freedom, we want to play. And he's like, we're going to India. And so we all 6 of us went to India, and it was monsoon. And I think we arrived at midnight. And we had all these people come pick us up, and we were in these jeeps and cars driving through the streets of Mumbai in pitch darkness. And it's raining. And there were people sleeping on the streets. And it was like, you've arrived in hell.
Had you been before?
I'd been when I was 10. So that was the first time as an adult where you kind of comprehend. As a child, it's like, running bare feet and not having a toilet. It's no big deal, you're just a kid. But, as a 20-something-year-old, you're like, no, this is not going to work. And when we arrived